The unexpected visitor. Jackson Foster wiped grease-stained hands on his worn denim overalls and gazed at the 1972 Mustang that had occupied his garage for the past 3 weeks. At 62, his joints protested more than they used to, but his skilled hands still remembered every curve and connection of an engine like they were extensions of his own body. The setting sun cast long shadows through the workshop windows of his rural Montana property, bathing the scattered tools and parts in golden light. 20 years of retirement from the auto plant hadn't dimmed his passion for machines. If anything, the solitude had enhanced it. "Almost there, old girl," he muttered, patting the Mustang's hood. His voice, roughened by years and solitude, echoed in the empty space. Living alone suited Jackson. After Margaret passed 5 years ago, he'd retreated further into himself, finding comfort in metal and motors rather than people. His nearest neighbor was 3 miles down the dirt road, exactly how he preferred it. The sudden flash outside his window nearly caused him to drop the wrench he was cleaning. A brilliant green streak tore across the darkening sky, leaving a luminous trail that disappeared behind the pine-covered hills that bordered his property. What in the world? Jackson moved to the window, watching as the light faded. That was no ordinary meteor, he'd seen plenty in his years out here. This moved differently, almost as if it was controlled. Something deep within him stirred, a curiosity that had been dormant for too long. Before he could talk himself out of it, Jackson grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and jacket, stepping out into the crisp autumn air. The woods behind his property were familiar territory, but walking them at dusk with only the beam of his flashlight guiding him felt different tonight. The normal night sounds, crickets chirping, the occasional hoot of an owl, were eerily absent, replaced by an unsettling silence. The smell reached him first, scorched earth and something metallic, almost like ozone. Following his nose and the disturbed vegetation, Jackson emerged into a small clearing that hadn't existed that morning. The ground was charred in a perfect circle, trees on the perimeter bent away as if blown by some massive force. In the center sat an object that Jackson's mind struggled to process. It was clearly a vessel of some kind, though unlike any aircraft he'd ever seen. About the size of a small car, its surface gleamed with an iridescent blue-green material that seemed to shift and ripple even as it remained solid. There were no visible seams or joints, the entire structure appeared to be formed from a single piece of material. Jackson approached cautiously, his heart hammering against his ribs. The logical part of his brain told him to turn around, to go back home and call someone, the police, the military, anyone. But something pulled him forward, step by careful step. A section of the craft's surface suddenly slid open without sound, revealing a dim interior. Jackson froze, his flashlight beam fixed on the opening. A hand, or something like a hand, emerged first. It had 4 elongated fingers with an extra joint and skin that shimmered with the same iridescence as the craft. The creature that pulled itself halfway out of the opening was humanoid but clearly not human. Its face was narrow and delicate, with large, almond-shaped eyes that reflected Jackson's flashlight with a golden gleam. Its skin was the color of pale jade with subtle patterns that seemed to pulse with each labored breath it took. Where hair should be, fine tendrils that resembled fiber optic filaments flowed from its scalp, glowing softly in the darkness. The alien, because what else could it be, looked directly at Jackson before collapsing half in, half out of the craft. Dark fluid that gleamed purple in the flashlight beam seeped from a wound in its side. Jackson stood frozen, his mind racing through every science fiction movie he'd ever seen. First contact usually ended badly for the humans involved. He should run. He should hide. Instead, he stepped forward. "Hey, you okay?" The words felt ridiculous leaving his mouth, of course it wasn't okay. And it probably couldn't understand English anyway. The alien's eyes flickered, focusing on Jackson with obvious effort. It made a sound, a series of musical tones that rose and fell like a question. Jackson knelt beside the fallen figure, medical training from his army days kicking in despite the surreal circumstances. "You're hurt. I need to stop this bleeding." He removed his jacket and pressed it against the wound. The alien flinched but didn't resist. Up close, Jackson noticed more details. The creature was slender but muscular, its proportions similar to a human's but elongated. Its face, though alien, expressed something universal, pain and fear. "I'm going to help you," Jackson said, more to himself than to the injured being. "But I need to get you someplace warm." The alien's weight surprised him as he carefully lifted it from the craft, lighter than expected, despite being roughly his height. Its skin felt warm and slightly textured, like fine suede. The musical sounds it made grew weaker as Jackson carried it through the darkened woods toward his home. By the time they reached his cabin, the alien had fallen unconscious, its breathing shallow but steady. Jackson laid it gently on his bed, the incongruity of the otherworldly being against his faded plaid comforter striking him as almost comical. In the proper light of his bedroom, Jackson got his first good look at the wound, a deep gash that ran along the alien's left side. The purple fluid had slowed but not stopped. Working quickly, he cleaned the area with water, not knowing if antiseptics would help or harm an extraterrestrial physiology. As he applied a makeshift bandage, the alien's eyes flickered open again. Those golden orbs studied Jackson with an intensity that made him pause. "Nari," the alien said in a clear, melodic voice that seemed to resonate in Jackson's head more than his ears. One slender hand touched its own chest. "Nari. Your name?" Jackson asked, pointing to the alien and then repeating, "Nari." The alien blinked slowly in what Jackson interpreted as affirmation. "Jackson," he replied, pointing to himself. "Jackson Foster." "Jackson," Nari attempted, the sound strangely beautiful in that musical voice. As he finished bandaging the wound, Jackson noticed something else, a strange device attached to Nari's wrist. It looked technological, with tiny lights that pulsed in sequence. Perhaps a communicator. Would others come looking? The thought should have terrified him, but instead, Jackson felt an odd sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. This being needed his help, and he had a spare room, medical supplies, and time. The rest they would figure out together. "Rest now," Jackson said, pulling the comforter over Nari's slender form. "You're safe here." As Nari's eyes drifted closed, Jackson settled into the chair beside the bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of the alien's chest. The night stretched ahead, filled with questions without answers, but for the first time in years, Jackson Foster didn't feel alone. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting golden patterns across the bedroom where Nari lay. Jackson stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, still half convinced he'd dreamed the entire encounter. But there was no denying the reality of the slender, jade-skinned being occupying his bed, chest rising and falling in a rhythm slightly faster than human. During the night, Jackson had researched alien encounters online, mostly conspiracy theories and fiction, but he'd hoped for some practical advice on interspecies first aid. Finding nothing useful, he'd settled for monitoring Nari's condition and changing the bandages twice. The purple blood had eventually stopped flowing, and the wound's edges seemed to be sealing themselves at an accelerated rate. Nari stirred, those luminous golden eyes opening slowly. Upon seeing Jackson, the alien tensed momentarily before relaxing with apparent recognition. "Jackson," Nari said, the musical voice stronger than the previous night. "Morning," Jackson replied, approaching carefully. "How are you feeling?" Nari's hand went to the bandaged side, pressing gently. "Better. Thank you." Jackson nearly dropped his coffee mug. "You speak English?" The alien's lips, similar to human lips but with subtle ridges along the edges, curved into what might have been a smile. One long finger tapped the strange device on Nari's wrist. "Translation matrix. It learns quickly. Not perfect, but functional." Jackson set his mug on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. "That's incredible technology." "Standard equipment for scouts," Nari replied, then winced slightly while adjusting position. "My people study many worlds. The confirmation that there were more aliens out there sent a shiver down Jackson's spine. Are they coming for you? Your people. A shadow passed over Nari's features. Eventually. My beacon was damaged in crash. Will take time to reach them. Jackson nodded, processing this information. Why did you crash? Was it an accident? Nari's gaze dropped, the glowing tendrils on the alien's head dimming slightly. Attacked. Attacked? By what? Your military aircraft. They pursued when I entered atmosphere. Jackson frowned. That doesn't make sense. Our government would want to study your ship, not shoot it down. Your kind fears what it does not understand, Nari said, voice tinged with bitterness. My species has observed humans for generations. You are known to be violent. Unpredictable. The statement stung Jackson's pride. Yet here you are, alive, because a human helped you. Nari's eyes fixed on Jackson, studying him with disconcerting intensity. Yes. This contradicts our data. You should have captured me. Or killed me. Jackson stood abruptly, offended. Is that what you think of us? That we're just savage animals? Evidence suggested. Evidence from where? War zones. Conflict areas. Jackson paced the small bedroom. That's like judging all of your species based on your worst examples. Nari remained silent, those golden eyes tracking Jackson's movements. Look, Jackson continued, his voice softening, I won't pretend humans are perfect. We've done terrible things to each other, to our planet. But that's not all we are. He gestured toward the window, where birds flitted between pine branches. We create art, music. We risk our lives to save strangers. We adopt animals that give us nothing but companionship in return. Nari's head tilted, the glowing tendrils brightening with apparent interest. Your species is contradictory. Complicated, Jackson corrected with a half-smile. Like any intelligent species must be. A sound emerged from Nari that Jackson couldn't immediately identify, a melodious vibration that he realized, with surprise, was laughter. Perhaps our data was incomplete, Nari admitted. Jackson checked the bandage, noting with amazement how quickly the wound was healing. You should eat something. I don't know what your kind consumes, but my biology can process most carbon-based nutrition, Nari explained. Simple carbohydrates would be ideal. Jackson nodded. Oatmeal it is, then. While preparing breakfast, Jackson heard a shuffling sound and turned to find Nari standing in the kitchen doorway, leaning against the frame for support. In full daylight, the alien's appearance was even more striking, tall and graceful, with those luminous tendrils floating gently around the slender face. You shouldn't be up yet, Jackson admonished, pulling out a chair at the small kitchen table. I have been motionless too long, Nari replied, carefully lowering into the seat. My species requires movement for proper healing. As they ate, Jackson his usual eggs and toast, Nari a bowl of oatmeal with honey, the alien's eyes constantly roamed the kitchen, examining every object with obvious curiosity. Your dwelling is isolated, Nari observed. Jackson nodded. I prefer it that way. People can be exhausting. Yet you help a stranger not of your world. Jackson considered this. Maybe I just help those who need it. Human or otherwise. Nari's fingers traced the edge of the wooden table. This material, organic matter shaped by tools. We have similar crafts, though our materials are grown rather than harvested. Grown. Like plants. Similar. We cultivate structures with specific properties. Our ships, our dwellings, all living material, symbiotically bonded to us. The concept fascinated Jackson. They spent the morning exchanging information, Jackson explaining human history, culture, and technology while Nari described a civilization so advanced it seemed like magic. The alien's home world orbited a distant star, part of a federation of planets united by common goals and technologies. Your people have achieved much despite your short lives, Nari commented, examining a photograph of Jackson and Margaret on their wedding day. You are resilient. We have to be, Jackson replied. Life here isn't easy for most. Nari set down the photograph. Why did your military attack my vessel? If you are not all violent, as you claim. Jackson sighed. Fear, probably. Your ship was unknown, unidentified. Military protocols treat unknown craft entering our airspace as potential threats. And you? Are you not afraid? Jackson considered the question. I was. Still am, a little. But fear doesn't have to control your actions. Nari's expression shifted to something Jackson couldn't interpret. In my culture, we are taught that fear is wisdom, it protects us from danger. Your willingness to overcome fear for a stranger, this is not a trait we associate with primitive species. Maybe we're not as primitive as you thought, Jackson replied with a wry smile. Later that afternoon, Jackson helped Nari walk outside to sit on the porch. The alien breathed deeply, analyzing Earth's atmosphere with evident curiosity. Your world has a vivacity to it. So many different life forms in complex relationships. Nari gestured toward birds, insects, plants. My world is more cultivated. Controlled. Sounds sterile, Jackson commented. Efficient, Nari corrected. Though perhaps lacking in spontaneity. They watched the sun begin its descent toward the horizon, a comfortable silence between them. Jackson found himself studying Nari's profile, so alien yet increasingly familiar after hours of conversation. The peaceful moment shattered when Nari suddenly tensed, the wrist device emitting a series of rapid pulses. What is it? Jackson asked, alarmed by the change in Nari's demeanor. My people, Nari replied, voice tight with concern. They've received my distress signal. A retrieval team has been dispatched. Jackson felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. That's good, right? They'll take you home, get you proper medical care. Nari's golden eyes met Jackson's, filled with an emotion he couldn't name. Jackson Foster, there is something I must tell you. The team coming, they are not simply rescuers. What do you mean? They are warriors. Protectors. Nari's voice grew urgent. My kind believes humans are dangerous. They will come armed, expecting resistance. Expecting brutality. Jackson felt a chill despite the warm afternoon. And what will they do when they arrive? Standard protocol for hostile worlds is to eliminate all witnesses to our presence. Nari's fingers gripped Jackson's wrist with surprising strength. I cannot allow that to happen. The fading afternoon light cast long shadows across Jackson's property as he hurriedly packed supplies into his old pickup truck. Inside the cabin, Nari was gathering the few belongings they could salvage from the crashed ship, including a small device that Nari insisted was essential for their survival. How much time do we have? Jackson asked, tossing a first aid kit into the truck bed. Nari emerged from the cabin, moving with increased fluidity despite the still healing wound. The recovery team will arrive within 12 Earth hours. They are thorough. Jackson paused, wiping sweat from his brow. And you're sure they won't listen to reason? You can't just tell them I helped you. The alien's expression darkened, luminous tendrils contracting slightly. My people follow strict protocols regarding uncontacted species. They believe humans are unpredictable predators who would dissect us for our technology if given the chance. That's not entirely wrong, Jackson admitted grimly. There are humans who would do exactly that. But you are not one of them. Nari's golden eyes fixed on Jackson with startling intensity. I have come to understand that your species contains multitudes. Jackson checked his watch. Sunset would arrive soon, giving them the cover of darkness for their escape. So what's the plan? We can't outrun a spaceship in my old Ford. We don't need to outrun them, Nari replied, carefully placing the salvage device in the truck. We need to change the narrative. The narrative? The story my people tell themselves about humans. Nari gestured toward the distant horizon. There is a place where we can broadcast a message, a truth they cannot ignore. Jackson raised an eyebrow. And where exactly is this place? Your government maintains a deep space communications array approximately 300 kilometers from here. I can reconfigure it to transmit on frequencies my people will recognize. You want to break into a government facility? Jackson laughed humorlessly. That's a great way to prove humans aren't dangerous, by getting us both shot by security. Do you have a better suggestion? Nari challenged. Jackson sighed, considering their limited options. I might know someone who could help us. An old friend who works in satellite communications. But I haven't spoken to her in years. Will she report us? Donna was never much for authority, Jackson said with a faint smile. And she's always believed we weren't alone in the universe. Seeing you might be the highlight of her life. As darkness fell, they left Jackson's cabin behind, the pickup's headlights cutting through the growing gloom. Jackson couldn't help glancing in the rearview mirror, watching his home, the refuge he'd built after Margaret's death, disappear around a bend in the road. Would he ever see it again? Beside him, Nari sat rigidly alert, those alien eyes scanning the night sky. The silence between them felt charged with unspoken questions. Tell me about them, Jackson finally said. Your people. What should I expect? Nari's fingers traced patterns on the passenger window, following raindrops that had begun to fall. The Valoran are methodical. We value order, precision, predictability. Our society has not experienced internal conflict for over 2,000 years. Sounds peaceful. Peace through control, Nari clarified. Deviations from established protocols are discouraged. So you're breaking the rules by helping me? Nari's tendrils pulsed with subtle blue light. I am committing what my people would consider a serious transgression. Contact with uncleared species without authorization is forbidden. Then why risk it? Jackson asked, genuinely curious. Why not just wait for your rescue team and let them do whatever they plan to do? The alien was silent for a long moment, rain drumming steadily on the truck's roof. Because you showed me something my people have forgotten. And what's that? That true understanding requires vulnerability. Nari's voice softened. You could have left me to die, or captured me, or called your authorities. Instead, you helped without expectation of reward or advantage. Such behavior contradicts everything we believe about emerging intelligent species. Jackson shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what seemed right. That, Nari said, is precisely what makes it remarkable. They drove through the night, stopping only for fuel and to make a brief call from a payphone. Donna had sounded shocked to hear Jackson's voice after 5 years of silence, but she'd agreed to meet them at her remote cabin near the Blackfoot River. As dawn broke, they pulled onto a narrow dirt road leading deep into pine forest. Jackson's exhaustion battled with his growing anxiety. We should be safe here for a day or two, he said as a small log cabin came into view. Donna lives off-grid, no cell service, satellite internet only through a scrambled connection. If your people are tracking electronic signatures, this place should be relatively invisible. A tall, gray-haired woman emerged from the cabin, squinting suspiciously at the approaching truck. When she recognized Jackson, her weathered face broke into a cautious smile. You look like hell, Jack, she called as they parked. Good to see you too, Donna, he replied, climbing stiffly from the driver's seat. When Nari emerged from the passenger side, Donna froze, her smile vanishing. Her hand moved subtly toward her hip, where Jackson knew she kept a revolver. It's okay, Jackson said quickly, stepping between them. This is Nari. The friend I mentioned. Donna's eyes widened, taking in Nari's unmistakably alien features. Jesus Christ, she whispered. You weren't kidding. I assure you I mean no harm, Nari said, the musical voice causing Donna to take an involuntary step back. It talks, she breathed. Of course it talks. Why wouldn't it talk? Jackson placed a calming hand on her shoulder. We need your help, Donna. And we don't have much time. Inside Donna's cabin, they explained the situation over strong coffee. To her credit, Donna listened without interruption, her initial shock giving way to focused attention. So let me get this straight, she said when they finished. Alien warriors are coming to Earth to potentially kill you both, and your plan is to hijack a government deep space array to send them a message. That's the simplified version, Nari acknowledged. Donna took a long sip of coffee. The array at Mount Wilson is a listening post, not a transmitter. It wouldn't have the power to send a message into deep space. Nari produced the device salvaged from the crashed ship. This can amplify the signal if connected to your equipment. I merely need access to the facility. Which is heavily guarded by military personnel, Donna pointed out. Not exactly a walk in the park. Jackson leaned forward. You still have contacts there, don't you? People who owe you favors. Donna's expression hardened. I've spent 15 years rebuilding my life after the conspiracy theories cost me my career. You're asking me to risk everything I've worked for. I'm asking you to help save lives, Jackson replied quietly. Mine included. A tense silence filled the cabin. Finally, Donna sighed. There might be a way. The facility conducts maintenance every third Thursday. Security is reduced, and they bring in civilian contractors. I know someone who could get us temporary credentials. When is the next third Thursday? Nari asked. Tomorrow, Donna said grimly. Jackson checked his watch. That gives us less than 24 hours before Nari's people arrive. Cutting it close, Donna muttered, moving to a locked cabinet. She removed a satellite phone and began dialing. This had better be worth it, Jack. While Donna made arrangements, Jackson and Nari stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and impending rain. Your friend doesn't fully trust me, Nari observed. Can you blame her? Jackson replied. Until yesterday, she thought aliens were theoretical. And you? Do you trust me completely? Jackson considered the question. I trust that you don't want me dead. Beyond that. I'm taking it on faith. Nari's expression shifted subtly. Faith. An interesting concept. My people abandoned it generations ago in favor of empirical certainty. Sometimes certainty isn't an option, Jackson said. Sometimes you have to act on incomplete information. A precarious way to navigate existence. But more interesting, Jackson countered with a small smile. Their conversation halted as Donna emerged from the cabin, her expression grim. We have a problem, she announced. My contact says security at the facility has been tripled overnight. Something about anomalous atmospheric readings in this region. Nari's tendrils pulsed with alarm. They've detected the approach of the recovery vessel. Your military is preparing for potential contact. Jackson felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. So breaking into the facility is no longer an option. Not unless you want to trigger an interspecies war, Donna confirmed. Nari's golden eyes narrowed in concentration. There is another possibility. A risk, but perhaps our only remaining option. I'm listening, Jackson said. We used the beacon from my ship to draw the recovery team to a specific location of our choosing. Somewhere isolated, where I can communicate with them directly before they take action. And what's to stop them from eliminating us on sight? Donna asked bluntly. Nari's gaze shifted to Jackson. Nothing. Except his presence as living proof that our understanding of humanity is flawed. You're suggesting we use Jack as a test subject? Donna's voice rose with indignation. That's insane. Actually, Jackson said slowly, it might work. If their whole premise is that humans are inherently violent and dangerous, my peaceful cooperation could challenge that assumption. Or they could disintegrate you before you get a word out, Donna countered. Nari's slender hand touched Jackson's arm. I cannot guarantee your safety. But I believe this represents our best chance to prevent bloodshed on both sides. The weight of the decision pressed on Jackson's shoulders. Everything in his life, his quiet retirement, his solitary existence, had been upended in less than 48 hours. Now he faced a choice that might determine the future relationship between two species. Where would we meet them, he asked finally. The clearing where my ship crashed, Nari replied. They will be drawn there naturally to investigate the wreckage. Jackson nodded slowly. Then we go back. We face them together. Donna threw up her hands in frustration. You're both crazy. Maybe, Jackson admitted. But sometimes crazy is all you've got. As they prepared to leave, loading supplies back into the truck, a distant sound reached them, the low, pulsing thrum of engines unlike anything manufactured on Earth. They're early, Nari whispered, face paling to a lighter shade of jade. The hunt had begun. The drive back to Jackson's property was tense, the truck speeding along empty country roads as dark clouds gathered overhead. Nari sat rigidly in the passenger seat, the device from the crashed ship clutched tightly in those long, elegant fingers. The alien's tendrils had dimmed to an anxious, pulsing glow. Tell me exactly what to expect, Jackson said, knuckles white on the steering wheel. What weapons do they carry? How many will there be? A standard recovery team consists of 5 operatives, Nari replied, voice tight. They will be armed with energy weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill, at least initially. Their primary directive will be to secure me and eliminate evidence of contact. Evidence meaning me, Jackson clarified grimly. Yes. But they will not act without authorization from their commander. Nari's golden eyes fixed on Jackson. That is our opportunity. If we can communicate before they engage protocols, there is a chance. Donna, squeezed into the small space behind the seats, leaned forward. And if they don't listen? Nari's silence was answer enough. Rain began to fall as they neared Jackson's property, fat droplets splattering against the windshield. The wipers struggled to maintain visibility as the heavens opened, turning the dirt road into a muddy challenge. Weather works in our favor, Jackson noted. Might slow them down, reduce visibility. It won't impede their scanning technology, Nari cautioned. They can detect biological signatures through solid matter. They parked the truck behind Jackson's cabin, out of sight from the clearing where Nari's ship had crashed. The rain had intensified, falling in sheets that transformed the landscape into a blur of gray and green. Inside the cabin, they quickly established a plan. Nari would activate the beacon, drawing the recovery team to their location. Jackson would remain hidden until the team arrived, then reveal himself only when Nari had established communication. Your presence must be surprising but non-threatening, Nari emphasized, adjusting the salvage device. Any perception of aggression will trigger their defense protocols. So I just walk out with my hands up and smile? Jackson asked sarcastically. Essentially, yes. Donna checked her watch. How long after you activate the beacon? Minutes, Nari replied. They are already in Earth's atmosphere, searching for my signature. Jackson moved to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked forest. The familiar landscape, his sanctuary for so many years, now felt like alien territory itself, a battleground for a confrontation he could never have imagined. You know, he said quietly, when Margaret died, I thought I was done with important moments. Done with anything that mattered beyond getting through each day. He turned to face Nari. Funny how life surprises you. Life is persistent that way, Nari agreed, the musical voice softening. Across countless worlds, I have observed this constant, the unexpected finds us all. A sudden urgency seized Jackson. He crossed the room to a small bookshelf and removed a leather-bound album. "If this goes wrong, if I don't make it, I want you to have this." Nari accepted the album with evident confusion. "What is it?" "Photographs. My life. Margaret and me. Places we loved." Jackson's voice grew rough. "Someone should remember." The alien opened the album carefully, golden eyes widening at the images inside: Jackson and Margaret on their wedding day, at the Grand Canyon, building the cabin together. A visual history of human connection. "Your mate," Nari said softly, touching a photo of Margaret laughing by a lake. "She had joy in her." "Yes," Jackson whispered. "She did." The moment stretched between them, fragile and profound. Then Nari closed the album and returned it to Jackson. "Keep this safe," the alien said. "You will need it to show me more when this is over." The confidence in Nari's voice gave Jackson strength. He nodded once, tucking the album back onto the shelf. "It's time," Nari announced, activating the beacon with a complex sequence of touches. The device emitted a soft, pulsing light, accompanied by a barely audible hum. Almost immediately, Nari's wrist communicator responded with a series of rapid signals. "They've locked onto the signal," Nari confirmed. "Estimated arrival, 4 minutes." Jackson checked the cabin windows, ensuring all blinds were drawn. Donna positioned herself by the rear exit, ready to flee if necessary. "Remember," Nari said urgently, "do not appear until I signal. They must see me first, understand that I am unharmed." The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Jackson's heart hammered in his chest, each beat a reminder of his vulnerability, of humanity's vulnerability, in the face of a technologically superior species. Then they heard it, a high-pitched whine cutting through the storm's fury. The sound grew louder, accompanied by a pressure change that made Jackson's ears pop painfully. "They're here," Nari whispered. Through a gap in the blinds, Jackson watched as a craft appeared above the clearing. Unlike Nari's smaller vessel, this ship was angular and predatory, hovering with menacing precision despite the storm. It emitted no light, its surface absorbing rather than reflecting the afternoon gloom. "That doesn't look friendly," Donna muttered from her position. "Valorian military vessels are designed to intimidate," Nari explained, moving toward the door. "It is time. Stay hidden until my signal." Before Jackson could respond, Nari slipped outside into the downpour. Through the window, Jackson watched the alien move with graceful purpose toward the center of the clearing, arms spread wide in what he assumed was a gesture of peaceful greeting. The hovering craft descended slowly, landing with surprising gentleness on the muddy ground. A section of its hull slid open, revealing a ramp that extended downward. 5 figures emerged, taller than Nari, their bodies encased in form-fitting armor that seemed to absorb light. Their faces were obscured by helmets with opaque visors, and each carried what could only be weapons, sleek devices attached to their forearms. Nari approached them slowly, speaking in a language Jackson couldn't understand, musical tones and resonant vibrations that carried even through the storm. The armed figures remained in formation, weapons not quite aimed at Nari but ready nonetheless. One figure stepped forward, removing its helmet to reveal features similar to Nari's but more angular, with tendrils that glowed fierce red against the gray backdrop of rain. This alien spoke sharply, gesturing toward the cabin with evident suspicion. Nari's reply seemed placating, hands moving in elaborate gestures that Jackson couldn't interpret. The exchange continued for several tense minutes, the leader's posture growing increasingly rigid. Suddenly, one of the armed figures activated a device that emitted a sweeping beam of blue light across the clearing. The alien barked something that sounded like an alarm, and all weapons raised simultaneously, pointing directly at the cabin. "They've detected us," Donna hissed. "Plans blown." Jackson made a split-second decision. Before Donna could stop him, he flung the door open and stepped outside, hands raised high above his head. The effect was immediate. All 5 aliens swiveled toward him, weapons charging with an ominous hum. Nari moved quickly, positioning between Jackson and the recovery team, speaking rapidly in that musical language. "I mean no harm," Jackson called, rain plastering his gray hair to his forehead. "I helped Nari. We're friends." The leader barked an order, and two of the armed figures advanced toward Jackson, weapons unwavering. Nari continued arguing, gestures becoming more emphatic. Jackson remained perfectly still, hands raised, as the aliens approached. Up close, their armor revealed intricate patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. Their helmeted heads tilted, studying him with what he imagined was a mixture of curiosity and disgust. One reached out with a device that emitted the same blue scanning light, running it over Jackson's body from head to toe. Whatever readings it provided seemed to surprise the alien, who turned to communicate with the leader. The tense standoff continued, rain pouring down on this surreal tableau, 5 advanced aliens, 1 injured refugee, and a single human whose actions might determine the future relationship between two species. The leader approached slowly, removing its helmet to better study Jackson. The alien's face was striking, similar to Nari's but marked with decorative patterns that seemed to indicate rank or status. Its tendrils writhed with aggressive energy. "You assisted the scout?" the leader asked, voice translated through a device similar to Nari's but harsher, more mechanical. "Yes," Jackson replied simply. "Nari was injured. I provided shelter and medical care." "For what purpose? What did you hope to gain?" The question confused Jackson. "Gain? Nothing. Nari needed help. That was enough." The leader's eyes, amber rather than gold, narrowed suspiciously. "Humans do not act without self-interest. Our studies are clear on this point." "Your studies are incomplete," Jackson countered, lowering his hands slightly. "Like any species, we contain multitudes. Yes, some humans are driven by selfishness, greed, violence. Others by curiosity, compassion, the desire to connect." Rain streamed down Jackson's face as he continued, finding courage in the simple truth. "I helped Nari because it was the right thing to do. Because suffering should be eased when possible. Because boundaries between species don't negate the obligation to show kindness." Nari stepped forward, speaking urgently in their native language. The leader responded sharply, but Nari persisted, eventually extending a hand toward the leather album visible through the open cabin door. After a tense moment, the leader nodded. One of the armed figures retrieved the album, bringing it into the rain where it was quickly soaked. Nari opened it carefully, showing the photographs to the leader, images of Jackson's life, his love for Margaret, the world they had built together. The leader studied the pictures, tendrils pulsing with changing colors. Finally, it looked up at Jackson with altered expression. "You mourned your mate," it stated, not a question but a recognition. "Every day," Jackson replied simply. "Yet you continue. You build. You help strangers." The leader's translated voice held a new note, something approximating wonder. "Even those unlike yourself. That's what humans do at our best," Jackson said. "We endure. We connect. We grow." A long silence followed, broken only by the steady rhythm of rain. The leader conferred with the others, their musical language rising and falling like the storm itself. Finally, the leader approached Jackson directly. "I am Commander the Liv of the Valorian fleet. Our protocols regarding first contact with potentially hostile species are being reconsidered." Jackson allowed himself to breathe. "That seems wise. Scout Nari violated direct orders by revealing themselves to you," the Liv continued. "Yet this violation has provided valuable data. Perhaps our assessment of human potential requires updating." "Perhaps it does," Jackson agreed. The Liv gestured toward the ship. "We must return to our vessel. Nari requires proper medical attention." Jackson felt a pang of loss he hadn't anticipated. "Of course." Nari approached him, those golden eyes holding his gaze. Jackson Foster. My people have a saying, true understanding begins where fear ends. You have taught me the wisdom in this. Will I see you again? Jackson asked. The future contains many possibilities, Nari replied with that almost smile. Including return. As the aliens prepared to depart, Commander The Live turned to Jackson once more. Human Jackson Foster. Your actions have been unexpected. Our reports indicated that humans would respond with violence to any outside presence. Maybe you were looking at the wrong humans, Jackson suggested. Or perhaps, The Live conceded, we sought confirmation of our preconceptions rather than truth. The aliens boarded their vessel, Nari pausing at the ramp to look back at Jackson. They raised one hand in farewell, a gesture learned from humans. Jackson returned the gesture, standing in the rain as the ship rose smoothly into the sky. Within moments, it accelerated beyond sight, leaving only displaced clouds to mark its passage. Donna emerged from the cabin, standing beside Jackson in stunned silence. Did that just happen? She finally asked. Yeah, Jackson replied softly. It did. What now? Jackson looked around at his property, the cabin, the workshop, the forest surrounding them. Everything was exactly as it had been 2 days ago, yet everything had changed. Now, he said, we go on. Knowing we're not alone. Knowing we made a good first impression. Donna laughed shakily. A good first impression. On aliens. Because you showed them a photo album. Because I showed them humanity, Jackson corrected. The part worth knowing. As they walked back to the cabin, Jackson paused to look up at the clearing sky, where stars were beginning to emerge. Somewhere up there, Nari was traveling home with a new story to tell, a story about Earth and its inhabitants, about compassion offered freely, about connection across impossible differences. It wasn't the end he'd expected when he spotted that green streak across the night sky. It was something better, a beginning. In his pocket, Jackson felt something unfamiliar. Reaching in, he discovered a small object, a crystal that pulsed with gentle light, changing colors in rhythm with his heartbeat. Nari must have slipped it to him during their farewell. What's that? Donna asked, staring at the alien artifact. Jackson smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with technology. I think it's an invitation. The crystal glowed brighter in his palm, as if in confirmation. In its shifting colors, Jackson saw possibilities he had never imagined, new horizons, new connections, new purpose. Sometimes, he reflected, the most powerful weapon wasn't technology or force. Sometimes, it was simply the willingness to see beyond differences, to reach across the void with an open hand rather than a closed fist. Human compassion had proven itself the true weapon after all, not for destruction, but for building bridges across the stars.